if I could save 20 hours of my week by writing a piece of software that will automate my input, I want to do that. I want to learn how to do that,
Good programmers are lazy. They don't like repeating manual things. They don't like doing the same thing over and over again. So they figure out how to use technology to their best advantage and how to get it to do things in a way which gives them time to do more interesting things.
Welcome to the Leaders in Tech podcast. I am your host, David Mancella. We have been running this podcast for a couple of months now, and the more I interview incredible people in technology, the better my life gets. So, when I started this podcast was just to shine the light on the world on how to become a better leader in technology, because I truly believe that technology is what's going to change this world for a better place. Having said that, though, I am the one that is getting the light on. It's incredible. And it's because of my guests. And what a beautiful example of today's guest, Santosh. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. I stopped listening after you said incredible. It's like you just made my day.
Santosh, can you please, for the audience, tell me your full name, where do you live, and what do you do for a living?
So, my name is Santosh Shetty. I work for RBC. I live in Toronto, Ontario. For a living, I manage a bunch of technical teams which deliver mission-critical software services for various functions of RBC's finance side of things.
Beautiful. So for the audience, if you know who RBC is one of the largest banks in Canada. We only have 5 banks, I think, and this bank especially is multinational now. So it's a big role that you're living, and I want to thank you for that, because by you providing these services to the bank, the people that belong to the bank and the clients of the bank, I am one client, by the way, get a better life standard. I've been a loyal customer of Royal Bank for a long time, and I can see how technology is moving better and better every day.
It is. I think we are almost a company. We have so many new technologies that smaller organizations would not even dream of, right? I think we are trying our best to remain a bank. We are slowly becoming a tech company.
Right. But it's beautiful, because you're providing a great service to the country, and at the same time, with the technology innovation, you're staying at the forefront, and in big part is thanks to you and your team. So let's talk about that. You look like you're 25 years old, and it's impossible for a 25-year-old to have a senior position. So let's look back in your life. Tell me, how did you get going with computer science? Or were you ever involved in computer science at school, in university?
I was involved with it at school. So I started out as a hobby programmer in school using a language called Pascal. Very few people must have heard of it. And if you've heard of it, you're as old as I am. It was...
Okay, so now I know that you're not that young, because Pascal was the first language that I wrote in the 80s.
Perfect, David. You just spoiled it for all the young folks there. Yeah, that was my first language. Then we moved on to QW Basic and C++ during my engineering, and then slowly moved into .NET and Java. Then these days it's all JavaScript and Scala with a lot of big data, Apache Spark thrown in. So I've always been intrigued by how things work. So that's how I got into technology. It was an exercise in trying to figure things out, which turned from an hobby into passion. So after I completed my engineering at my first job as a programmer, and ended up in this industry. And I've loved every day of it.
That's beautiful. Now, so you started coding, you started programming before university then?
I did.
Just as a hobby?
Just as a hobby. Our school had got, I grew up in a small town in about 80 kilometers north of Bombay in India. So our school got a donation and they got about 8 new computers, and they had Pascal on them, and they had Prince of Persia. So instruction, if we were coding, we were allowed to play Prince of Persia after school. So we ended up practicing coding and showing what we were doing, writing small programs, and ended up taking it as got more interested in Pascal than in Prince of Persia, if you can believe it, and ended up being good at it.
That's fantastic. You know, the first course I took in university was economics. From the free world. Like, I was doing computer engineering. So I was doing computer engineering, and then I switched into computer software engineering, into development. But we had the first couple of years were very stable years for everybody, and you had to do economics. So at this class, this teacher, I still remember this guy, fascinating. That's the first time I learned about the free world. It's the first time I learned about democracy and the free economy, and how the invisible hand of economy takes care of everything. And this was in the 80s, right? The country that I was learning this, my first degree is from Guatemala. Like you, I'm an immigrant into Canada. The country was going through a civil war trying to fight off the communists. And you know what communism is, right? Basically, the government tells you what you're going to do for your life. You don't choose your career.
That's true.
If people think that socialism and communism is the next level, think twice. My country fought for 36 years to kick communism out of the country, and we did it. Thank God. My brother was killed in that war.
Yeah, that's tough.
But I tell you this because of what you told me, right? You are from Mumbai, a small town, and you found a way to get a computer, and you taught yourself computer, your first Pascal computing language. And look at you now, a senior leader in technology in the largest bank in the country, in Canada. Now, why do I tell you this? The first class that I got with this guy, my professor of economics, he said, people in the world have more or less the same intellectual capacity. Doesn't matter what country they come from. He says, the problem is the system. The problem for a country not to grow and be prosperous is the economic system that they have in. And he started giving examples. And I kind of didn't believe it, because I lived in a country where we were all the same. Like there is really no immigration in Guatemala. We're a mix between native Guatemalans and Europeans. They are called mestizos. And all of us look the same. So it was hard for me to understand until I got into Canada. When I moved to Canada in the 90s, and I had my first job as a leader in technology in Toronto, we had 32 countries represented in a 2,000 people company.
It's simple.
Countries.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Canada is an amazing place. Like it welcomes people from all over the world and gives them opportunity where you have no limits. I think it's a beautiful country. I've been here almost 12 years now, and I've grown, and every day I'm thankful. It's a beautiful place to grow, and my kids were born here. It's amazing. The tech scene is amazing. If you like what you're doing, you can grow a lot in this country. That being said, that if you are moving to Canada, do consider RVC. It's a wonderful place to be.
And to work.
And to work.
I guess you're looking for people. It's so hard right now, right? Hiring good talent is very hard.
Yeah, hiring good talent is hard, especially because a lot of times we have knowledge gaps in what people have studied in university and what they actually need to do on the job. So we end up having to look for folks who are coachable, teachable. They can pick things up. They can run things on their own. They take ownership. So along with base skills, you're looking for attitude where people are willing to take feedback and learn quickly. Mm-hmm. place where you need to have less ego. Tech landscape is very vast. No one leader. Like I'm one of the leaders in RBC. There's many more senior leaders who know a lot more than me, and I learn from them. Some of the best mentors I've had. My first manager in RBC, one of the best mentors. I still reach out to him, and he gives me a patient hearing. It's a very generous place to work, and people are generous with their time. Not easy when you look at the crazy schedules they keep, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's for sure. And what a beautiful example, eh? Like you and I are blessed to be in a place where we were allowed to foster freedom, right? Freedom and a free economy. And look at us now, right? Like for me, what you said that you want people that learn fast. I have been running my consulting firm, ISU Corp, for 18 years now. I help companies like yours, banks and insurance companies, to write their software programs. So we're an outsourced firm. And the only reason why we're still here, despite the huge competition, is because our team knows how to learn fast. And I was just talking about that with one of my senior architects today. I told him, you know, because we're about to get this huge project in AI, which we are already experts in AI, but this is a specific AI with micro medicine and analyzing blood samples and putting out a statistical analysis based on machine learning. And he says, I can't believe they're going to give us this job. And I said, well, I can, because they know that we learn fast. Because when they hire us to use breakthrough technologies, you got to go and learn and implement and fail fast and learn fast.
Yeah, and that's the key. That's the secret to being good at something, right? Not being afraid to try things and not being afraid of failure. Figuring out what is working and what is not working, and all the time course correcting till you figure out how everything actually fits. So if you love solving puzzles, you're going to be good at technology. If you love math, again, I'm being a bit biased because of my background. I love math. I love solving puzzles. And I feel that does play a significant role in how you pick up things. Focus, dedication, hard work, married with interest and curiosity about how things work, leads to a good career in technology.
That's beautiful and so well said. And it's a common path, eh? I always tell people that I fell into technology because I was lazy. So that was my passion of automation came because I was lazy. When I saw what if I could save 20 hours of my week by writing a piece of software that will automate my input, I want to do that. I want to learn how to do that. You know.
Good programmers are lazy. They don't like repeating manual things. They don't like doing the same thing over and over again. So they figure out how to use technology to their best advantage and how to get it to do things in a way which gives them time to do more interesting things.
Right. And the funny part though is that once I was a kid, obviously like you, I was 15 years old when I started writing computer languages, but that laziness from being a teenager turned into a huge discipline. So now will be like, how can I actually finish this program in an excellent way so I can figure out the next program that I need to write to help more people? So it became a passion of mine. It's at the end of the day, is how do I make these people have a better lifestyle by the code that I'm writing?
And that's the key, right? You hit the right track on how to grow in your career, how to learn things. And once you figure out what your learning style is, and once you figure out how to leverage that, your learning increases exponentially. So the key part is knowing yourself before you know anything else. What works for me? Not everything that, like I'm amazed by how quickly my kids are picking up. My son is 12 and he's already coding in Python and JavaScript. So it's amazing how quickly they pick things up. And this was something that I thought would take significant amount of time, but it's amazing how they pick things up, right? It's what works for their learning style. So these days you have tools around. we were forced to, I think both of us were forced to rely on books from libraries and borrowed books, because books used to be expensive. You couldn't afford all getting a hand.
You had to borrow a photocopy a lesson so you could learn it, right?
We don't talk about photocopying.
Well, this is the 80s, right? I don't think they were writing the copyright laws.
Exactly. But yeah,
in fact, the university had this service where you could actually go and photocopy a lesson.
I know. A lot of third world countries that was the case. You could pay and get a copy done, and luckily, it still the resources were available. It was just a matter of getting access to them. And now with YouTube and the learning resources have simply opened up, right? It comes down to what you're actually interested in and how willing you are to actually try things out. You want to learn how to set up a whole IT infrastructure. There are free options on Azure and AWS, which allow you to build a full IT organization. That's amazing what you can try out on the cloud platforms, right? And for very little money or almost free for very basic stuff that you would
and the courses online. You're right.
And courses online. Yeah.
When I moved to Canada, I went back to university. So I did my first degree, computer science degree in Guatemala. But when I came, it was too early in Canada. Nobody will give me a job as a developer. So I had to go back and do another full degree to get my credentials in Canada. But it was good because that allowed me to learn the culture. Yeah. And when I see how fast computer science grows, and this is incredible. That's why you are right. You have to have that attitude of solving puzzles or solving problems, because computer science grows so fast nowadays that even back then, when I graduated from my first computer science degree, it was all mainframe. Everything was around mainframe. My second degree in Canada was already client-server technologies. It was already a graphical user interfaces, mouse-driven technology. Like that,
amazing,
right? 4 years.
Exactly. 4 years. I mean, technology grows exponentially. Like 4 years back, if somebody had said you could have AI write papers for you, or build presentations, or even build small videos, it would have we would have been considered too optimistic. But these days, it's being done. Folks are creating beautiful presentations with very little effort using online AI tools, and you can create music. You can create. So it's come down to making it possible to put your ideas into more concrete form and shape with use of technology. That's what it is, right? And that's where technology leadership comes into play. How do you guide your organizations along a path where the decisions you make are going to set your organization apart and give you that competitive edge? If everybody is able to do the same thing, how do you stand out?
Exactly. By the way, that's another beautiful part about the system that we live in. Because of the healthy competition that we have, the consumer benefits the most because we're always trying to do things better. Yeah. Always. Yeah. It's the default. And that for me, that's called human growth, human progress. Right?
That is the key, right? Without competition, things die. It's competition is necessary for good ideas have to win so that they become better, right? If there is no competition, there won't be progress, and that's reality of life,
right? And I call it healthy competition now.
Yes, it is healthy.
We believe about cooperation. We cooperate with many companies, but still we're trying to make something that is better today than was yesterday. Right?
Exactly.
So you learned your first language. You were in high school. How did you decide to come into a computer science degree? So you did your education in India?
I did my education in India. I actually got my engineering degree, and I studied civil engineering during my engineering.
Civil engineering, not software or hardware.
No, not software or hardware. It was civil engineering because that was the only seat I could get based on my marks. And I could only afford to get into what is called the subsidized seats. I had to get something in Bombay. So I ended up taking the last seat in the second best engineering college in Bombay, and ended up doing civil engineering. And that's when I got hooked onto computers even more, because in India, in engineering, you have to have 3 courses of programming. So you ended up learning programming, and then got my first job in as a developer. And
Not as a civil engineer. So you never made a bridge or a building.
I never even drafted one on paper.
So
Not
did
that I
you take more
regret it.
courses, or?
I did take more courses. I did a lot of certifications. I did a course from IBM for a year and a half. I did some certification courses. I self-studied a lot. I love Robert Skinner's algorithms lectures on YouTube. So I ended up learning things which were required for me on the job, right? A lot of it. And I was lucky that I was in a very supportive environment where folks were interested in my progress, right from my first manager to ones I have now. So it helps a lot.
So your first job was in India then as a software developer?
Yeah, my first job was in India. It was a small company building parts out of metal pieces. So I did the first. My first job was building custom ERP system. So there was this company which would take metal pieces and convert them into parts which fit into cars. So they had the owner was an ex-car designer who worked for a large company which manufactured tractors in India, and he split out on his own and he started this small firm, and he was looking to hire someone and ended up hiring me, and I built out an ERP system for him. I didn't know it was called ERP back then. He used to call it.
This is the division of a startup. So your first job was a startup company.
Yeah, it was kind of like a startup company, and I've always had a lot of side projects going on. I do work with different advice startups, work on technical POCs all the time, just to keep my mind fresh when it comes to coding, right? Learning new things. But that's what happened. My first significant job, though, was with Kuwait Airways, which was a large organization. It was in the Middle East. Ended up working and building their APIS system, Advanced Passenger Information System, which allowed Kuwait Airways to integrate with US Customs and Border Protection. So that's when I got introduced to formal software engineering, formal processes,
Right.
different practices, design patterns, and then ended up learning a lot more.
Now, did you have to move countries too?
Yes. So I've moved countries twice already. I moved from India to Kuwait, from Kuwait to Canada.
Wow, that's incredible. When did you get married? During that transition or before?
Then got married when I moved to, just after moving to Kuwait, 2004.
Kuwait.
Been married almost 18 years.
Congratulations. That's beautiful. Kuwait, formal organization, you started learning a lot. When was the first time you had a leadership position?
So my first leadership position was in Canada. I joined a consulting company which used to manufacture checks for various banks in Canada. Again, the company had started a new division called Registry Services, and we were building a brand new product for banks in Canada for the commercial banking side. So banks in Canada had to perform what is called an KYC. You log into, if you have a commercial account with the bank is supposed to perform all the due diligence checks on you every year. So we built a product which made it possible to pull all the data from government lien registries to find if there are any liens registered against the company, from the Corporation Canada to find if there are, who are the directors, has there been a change in the directors, and so on, right? To find material changes. And that was my first major project. And I led a team, almost 150 people.
150 people.
Go from fast. That was very fast. So it was also a time when Canadian economy was on the verge of takeoff, 2010. Very good time to be in Canada. It's always a good time to be in Canada, but that year was especially good because I got my PR in 2010, permanent residency in Canada. I came for a 1 month period to find out how the economy here looks. And I applied on a whim. And before going back, I had 3 job offers. So I was stunned, like the amount of opportunity in the country was amazing. Like, so I had the tough part of getting my manager to agree, manager back in Kuwait Airways to agree to waive the 90-day notice period that used to be there in Kuwait. And
so you were still employed by the Kuwait company?
Yes. Wow. And I had come to visit. It was my wife's birthday. We came to visit to see how we applied to Canada on a whim, right? One of my friends applied and she said, "You should try." I said, "Yeah, whatever." And I filled in the form, sent in all the documents, and got selected. One of the best things I did, I think.
You did in your life.
Yeah. And then ended up in Toronto, not knowing a soul here. Didn't have a lot of friends because we were very new. But my wife was very social. She made friends and ended up getting a job within first 15 days. So that was amazing. Then went back, had to convince my manager to let me go. And he was very happy for me. So he actually helped me. In Kuwait, it's a long process to get things done, to close things out, right? You have to let your landlord know. So he spoke to my landlord and I convinced him to let me go. And it was wonderful. He was very helpful. I'm still in touch with those guys. So that helped moving to that enabled me to move to Canada. And got my first job. We ended up leading a very large team. And it was amazing. I was amazed at the pace that we did work. We were doing almost 16, 17-hour days.
Wow.
I barely lasted a year and a half in that company because I had just had a kid. And my wife was adamant, "You have to change jobs or I'm going back to India." It's not sustainable. And
what did you do?
Because we didn't have family here, right? So it was tough.
Only by yourself, it's hard.
Yeah.
Have a kid without family, it's hard.
Yeah, it's tough. Support.
What did you learn on that first job as a man? Because listen, it's very simple to deliver when you're disciplined and an excellent programmer by yourself. But when you have to respond for a bunch of people, it's different.
Yeah, I think the key thing I learned was the way things are managed in Canada are very different from how they are managed in other parts of the world. We are very empathetic. We tend to be very conscious of the decisions we make. This, I think, makes us stand out. My first job, primary thing in Canada I learned was clarity of thought and clarity of communication. It was fundamental when you're managing a large team to have things broken down and integration figured out in clear terms. Once you know that and you're able to break things into components and break those components into their individual responsibilities, and you have that clarity, then you can lead any size of team, right? Team of any size. But
you're right.
That's clear. That needs to be important.
So this is beautiful. Like, it's one of the first times I hear this, and I know this for a fact. Is the ability to break the job in smaller tasks, assign them to people, but then the ability to actually integrate those smaller tasks into the big picture.
Yeah.
So it's having that eagle eyes view and also motivating people to get their job done correctly because they want to, not because they have to.
Yeah. And in addition to that, you also have to pay close attention to how you integrate, right? You have to integrate at early stage, and you have to repeatedly integrate to make sure, especially when you're building a whole solution up. We were building a solution which integrated with all the 13 provincial registries in Canada, as well as Corporations Canada and Better Business Bureau. So we were pulling data from multiple sources. In addition, the banks would want us to produce a report in a very consistent form. So, and no registry in Canada is in consistent form, right? Every registry, every title registry, every corporation registry has its own quirks. They all try to be to stand out and be different, but that doesn't help banks when they're trying to train their staff into being able to read a report well, right? You have too many nuances. So what we did was pull all that data, consolidate it, and present a uniform report. So irrespective of whether you look at the report for a client in Ontario or client in British Columbia or Quebec, you would get a consistent, simple report to read, which showed you all the changes in a fixed pattern. So the training costs go down, people become more efficient, and they can take decisions faster. Right.
Beautiful.
That's important.
You just actually mentioned what happens with most of the systems that are good and you implement and they work.
Simplicity, right? Like Steve Jobs says, simplicity is the key.
Yeah, it's a genius. It's somebody that can take the complicated and show it in a simple way. That's it. Right?
Yeah, and then it seems a lot of work to get things to be simple enough. It is a lot of work. You have to try and figure out how people will interpret data. So I always like front-end work and seeing how things, like I'm primarily a back-end developer, but I always like front-end work because it makes your work stand out and look visual and makes it easy for people to consume the information you're trying to give them, right? So that translates into the same role.
It's beautiful. What happened after you quit? You found another job that give you at least 8 hours at night to help with the baby.
Yeah, that's what happened. Spent time with an title insurance company, which was a subsidiary of First American Bank in US. Again, nice people. I'm still in touch with most of them. Primary thing I learned there was to look at things from there. Again, I joined as a development lead, so I ended up leading a very small team, but interacting more with business, the stakeholders, as we like to call them in Canada. Ended up
stakeholders, yes.
Yeah, we ended up learning a lot more about business, and went from registries and mortgage business into title insurance. So picked up title insurance there. A lot of good things about that company as well. First Canadian Title was excellent people, very good fellow team members. Again, you learn a lot, and you learn a lot about yourself as well. What works for you and what doesn't work for you. But then I got bored of doing the same thing. They were building a lot of web services, which were integrating with the real estate business. And then the same thing was happening, and I got headhunted into TD Bank. Somebody from TD Bank approached me, a recruiter from TD Bank, and got into TD Asset Management Group. Worked with excellent leaders at TD. We re-architected their...
Were you in a leadership position there?
Yes, I was a solution design specialist, which was considered like an architect role. Mm-hmm. So you end up building POCs and having a team assigned with you who's actually going to roll out that POC into a full-fledged solution. So that was interesting. We built a solution for TD Asset Management, which is the central data hub, which was built as a revamp of their legacy system. And I learned a lot about migration there. Migrating from an old system.
Yeah, migration is not fun at all.
Migrating from an old system with archaic code base to something new, modern. And the end result was a lot of hard work, lot of work, but I think the results were beautiful. The users used it in a number of different areas in TD Bank as well. So the solution got adopted as a model for subdivisions of TD Asset Management. I believe the derivatives group took it. So, and then there got introduced to somebody who actually recruited me for RBC.
Okay, this is crazy. One thing that I want to stick out from your conversation, being a good IT leader, a good technology leader, is also knowing when it's time to leave.
It is.
What you did there with the microservices was great, because if you get complacent and you stay in your comfort zone for too long, you become a dinosaur, especially in this industry. Number one. Number two, you're beginning to live a life that is not fulfillment. It's a life that is monotonous, and you don't help your organization, your co-workers, you don't help anybody by doing that. And so I see a lot of people getting stuck in a job just because they feel comfortable and they know the job because they've done it so many times, and then they don't grow.
Yeah, I completely agree. To grow, you need to be challenging yourself every few years. You master something and you look for something which is a little above what your current skill set and capacity is, and then you pick up those skills. That keeps things interesting. Like I tend to get bored if I'm doing what I call routine work. If it's repetitive and it doesn't involve a lot of thinking, it tends to turn me off. So when things become too easy for me, I have always found more challenging things to do, and that's one of the good things about RBC. Right, we are a place where you will always find more interesting, challenging things to do. Now, I've changed a couple of jobs in RBC already.
Inside, which is it's a perfect situation when you have a big enough company where you can move up, right?
Yeah. So moved up and moved laterally as well. So that helped me pick up new skills. Like when I joined RBC, I had zero idea about the whole derivative business. And my manager used to sit me down and walk me through how the business works. So that's the kind of leadership we have here, right? And that helps.
And you know why people don't take that leap of faith? Because it is faith. When you take on a job that you don't know how to do it specifically, you need to have enough faith. It's funny because I'm a man of faith. I'm a born again Christian. I follow Jesus Christ, and it's actually it's in the Bible that says, whatever you do in life, it has to be aligned with the Bible, which is it has to be good for people. And number two, it has to require faith. What does that mean? It means that you don't know what you're gonna do, but you have confidence that you're gonna learn on the way and you're gonna perform better, right?
Yeah, that's beautifully put, right? That's the key. You are not going to know everything. You have to be comfortable with some uncertainty. But you have to believe in yourself enough to know this is something I can pick up. Like this is a key differentiator between folks who grow and folks who struggle to move on to the next levels, right? If you're confident enough that there's going to be things which you don't know and you're going to pick them up, it will help you believe more in your ability to learn than simply giving up saying, I do not know this. And this is something which I find it needs to be trained. You need to be trained to think like that.
Yeah.
it may not come naturally to everyone, right?
You need to,
You need to train yourself to think yes. And one way I feel you can do that is if you're picking up new skills, learn a foreign language, learn a new programming language, right? If you're used to a particular way of programming, like functional programming is a completely different way of thinking. Try functional programming. Try a language like F# or Scala. It changes the way you look at things and it broadens your horizons. So you are going to approach a problem from multiple viewpoints, and you'll always find a way to overcome the hurdles that stand in the way of your goals, right?
It's beautiful. You know, people get depressed when they stop growing.
They do.
But to grow, you need faith.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? You get too comfortable, you start getting depressed because you're not growing anymore as a person.
Yeah. It takes conscious training, right? That's another thing which is beautiful about RBC. Like RBC spends a lot of effort in communicating what they're trying to do into their leaders and training their leaders into adapting that mindset, right? Being positive all the time, knowing that you can ask for help, and knowing that there is a support system in case you get stuck with something. You can go and ask people. Like that attitude actually makes it very very hard for people to leave because you keep learning and you keep finding more and more challenging things.
And that's why you see that it's one of the biggest banks in Canada. I mean, if you just go look at the high-rise buildings they have in downtown Toronto. It's impressive, but everything starts with the culture, right? Now you're showing me that it's a culture of innovation, that where people fail, they get guided on how to overcome that failure. Because, yes, you're never going to tell me that you're going to read a book on learning how to ride a bike and you will never fall off that bike. You're going to fall off the bike eventually. Eventually, you're going to manage it. Not at the beginning.
Yeah, one of my first projects in RBC, I didn't do so well, but my manager backed me up. And he basically defended what the work we did, and never pushed us under the bus. So that was something, a standout attribute, right? It makes you, it builds loyalty, basically.
Yeah.
And that's
loyalty and confidence, right?
And confidence. And it builds confidence. Exactly. Right? Builds loyalty and confidence, and you know that somebody has your back. So you communicate what you're trying to do. You come out with a plan. Sometimes the plans are not going to work, so you pivot, and that's when you need support. Saying, yes, you tried this, did not work. Let's try something else.
Beautiful. Santosh, what a blessing to get to know you, to have this time to get your wisdom out of your heart. I would love to keep going, but I want to respect your time. I know you're a busy executive. One last question before we finish the podcast.
Sure.
If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself. Beautiful. It requires that for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
you don't need to believe in yourself. You need to let positivity come through before you can open your mind to new things, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's where faith starts, I believe,
Yeah.
For me, it's like, there is a saying that I have it in the back of my mind all the time. It says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So my self-belief is because my belief comes from my Creator, and there is nothing that can break that up. So that's what I get. That's the rock where I step to take the next leap of faith. For example, this podcast, right? I started a podcast in 2020 for entrepreneurs, and it became really popular, but I didn't know anything. Like, I'm a leader in technology too. Like, I run a software team. That's what I do for a living. You think I knew how to speak in front of the screen and ask questions, and No.
Yeah, it's believing in yourself is, I think, the critical part of learning. If you believe you can learn something, you will be able to learn something. If you do not have that belief, you end up questioning yourself and wasting time in negativity. So moving from a state of mind which is open to ideas is the first step towards accepting those ideas and moving on with them, right? And doing something useful with them. So I think that mindset shift needs to happen before you learn.
Beautiful. And it's the basis of leadership too, because if you don't even have that, how can you believe in other people that can do their job for you? Right?
Yeah. When you believe in yourself and you believe in your teams, good things happen.
Yeah, for sure.
You can, I like my teams to take ownership of what they're doing, and that helps, right? Because then they know that I trust them, and I actually trust them to do the job. That definitely helps.
Santosh, thank you so much for your time.
If
people like to get in touch with you, where can they find you online?
I am on LinkedIn, and that's the only social media I actively use.
Me too, by the way. Only LinkedIn. The other stuff is too polluted.
There's too much noise. Signal to noise ratio is too high. It's skewed in favor of noise. So I would say LinkedIn is comparatively tolerable.
It's because you know the basic principle of computer science: garbage in, garbage out. Right?
That's true.
Santosh, thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of the week. And,
you too, David.
This is your podcast. Whenever you want to come back, I'm here for you.
Happy to. Take care, David. Nice having this conversation. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.